Climate change is the challenge of our time. Its effects are global. Its consequences for the communities we serve are undeniable. But within this challenge lies the opportunity to reshape our communities for the better. Across the country, a new frontier in climate finance is emerging. From rural towns to urban centers, CDFIs are forging innovative partnerships that are not just addressing climate risks, but building stronger, greener communities. Now, thanks to the largest climate legislation in U.S. history, billions of dollars are flowing into low-income communities to fight climate change and build resilience. And at the heart of this movement, community lenders, CDFIs, who are stepping up to lead the way. But this isn't something we will do alone. Our partners will be key to our success. Together, we can turn possibility into progress, ensuring that the communities most affected by climate change are at the center of sustainable solutions. Our momentum is growing. From clean energy investments to green infrastructure, the results are undeniable. The future is ours to shape. By working together, we can build stronger, greener communities and a better world for generations to come.
Okay, thank you. I have dedicated my career to creating the type of infrastructure that enables people to believe that you don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. And we do this by applying a talent retention strategy to community development. It's the same kind of approach that successful businesses practice. And because they don't spend their time and money to improve their employees' ability to go and work for somebody else, like that would be crazy, right? But yet, in the community development world, billions of government, philanthropic, and private dollars are spent in low-status communities with the intention to support the people there. Yet, statistically, overall outcomes don't get much better and economic stagnation persists. Now, why is that? Is it only because there isn't enough capital at the right terms to get the economic development wheels turning? That's not untrue. Or are we missing opportunities to leverage the human capital that could have been created through all that spending in the first place? Basically, for those that do succeed, athletically, academically, artistically, we don't make much effort to retain them in the communities in which they're from. In fact, there's almost an expectation that the kids who grow up in those communities that are that way are expected to measure success by how far they get away from their communities. Talent retention strategies, like those used to grow successful companies, can be used to build great neighborhoods for the people born and raised in them. Now, I'm not saying that talent retention can replace all the other important work that goes on, but without talent retention, we are not leveraging human capital so that more people can take controls of the keys to their own economic recovery. And that's because when low-status communities lose talent, they lose consumer spending power. They lose day-to-day examples of success walking down their streets. They lose the financial acumen needed to take advantage of America's 30-year reurbanization trend that we've seen land values grow exponentially at the same time while the racial wealth gap continues to widen. Now, if it wasn't hard enough to deal with policies, decades of policies that produce systemic bias and its impact, now we have climate change to add to that and disrupts things even further. But the dollars devoted to managing that disruption represent an entry point for a change we can create for the communities we care about. I started my career working to adapt our communities to the changing climate because I knew back then that mitigating climate change was not likely to be successful in America. And sadly, I was correct. But what it taught me was how to connect community development and the environment much more expansively than most sustainability or environmental fields actually do. Air and water quality, obviously very important, but so is the experience of being in the built environment in your own community. Does it delight or depress you? What's the quality of your housing? Do you have third spaces that you frequent? And third spaces, for those of you who don't know, are places that are neither work nor home, but allow you to build community, like within your area. And are there even third spaces in your neighborhood for you to frequent? When walking around your neighborhood, do you feel like you're part of something that's dynamic and thriving, or do you feel like you have to measure your success by how far you get away from it? Or is there some feeling that there is hope that you can actually make a change? On-the-ground projects can literally change the way people relate to the environment around them. Transforming a dump on a street that dead-ended at the Bronx River into a national award-winning park connected people to the environment and to each other. That river was a no-go zone for most families. Now the children of some of those families actually work on projects along the river. We also launched a green-collar training and placement system for people with barriers to employment, such as being formerly incarcerated. Now, those jobs gave them a personal and a financial stake in improving the environment and also entry into the green economy. I also used existing projects that we were building to bring policymakers along to pass the green roof property abatement tax in New York City, which created green infrastructure projects and local jobs. And this type of approach kind of tests how our social and economic environment influences the way the decisions that people make, and explores how we can make communities more attractive to the people who usually leave. The boogie down grind is actually one angle that we use as a proof of concept. And so on a corner that actually was once a crack house, it epitomized all the tropes around inner cities. 20 years later, we built an award-winning community building third space serving culture through hip hop, great coffee and local IPAs and sangria, in the heart of America's poorest congressional district. And seeing things like this actually allows you to go like, this is a real possibility. But building on that, my company acquired a former rail station from Amtrak to develop a dynamic events and performance space that operates only seasonally because it doesn't have an HVAC system right now. But the whole point of it was designed to drive dollars and talent back, both from inside and outside the community, and then actually bring those dollars back into that neighborhood, into the local economy. And so, but unlike a cafe, something like this requires millions of dollars that I do not have. I am absolutely long on vision, but short on balance sheet. But from my seat in the New York Green Bank Advisory Board, I learned of their community decarbonization fund, offering CDFIs low rates for climate-related projects before the IRE came along with funds. And through New York Green Bank, I got connected with True Fund and Carver Bank, who are working with Accelerator New York City, along with Energy Infrastructure Partners and also New York Power Authority, to help figure out a way to finance Bronxlandia's conversion from literally being a historic barn that's open to the air to actually being an all-electric building with all sorts of other type of climate projects. Now, our building has loads of potential. It's historic, it's got good bones, it's actually in a pretty busy location that's going to be like a site of another transit-oriented development. But in a typically like this would have remained in an abandoned state till the market decided to see its value. And that usually often means that locals gets displaced and they're not included in those projects. And I can guarantee you that if this had been sort of like a typical kind of deal, this black chick from around the way would absolutely not be leading this development. But the social, economic, and climate-related benefits can happen all over the country because these climate dollars can work on the aspirational development we see an appetite for cities in all over this country. And I love helping align, local forces in the cities where I work to reveal their greatness. I am experiencing firsthand the creativity within the finance community to get seemingly impossible projects across the finish line. And I hope you all see yourselves in that light so that we can share in more of these types of victories together going forward. And thank you so much for your time. So, David, a big reason we're having this conversation today is because your office has made huge investments in this industry to address the climate challenge. What does EPA hope to accomplish with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund?
Besides saving the planet?
In addition to, yes.
Okay. Our major accomplishment, major goal is to catalyze an equitable and lasting clean energy transformation. And as you said, we're doing that by deploying $27 billion in financial capital in order to provide opportunities to unlock clean energy investments and opportunities around the country. And we're doing that, a couple of things that distinguish it. We've provided, unlike a lot of federal grant programs, we've given folks a lot of leeway to innovate, to inspire, to financially engineer new products. And I think one of the things that we're very excited about is how much creativity and innovation we're seeing brought to the table. We expect that to result in reduction of greenhouse gases, not surprisingly, saving energy, putting money back in the pockets of individuals, communities, organizations, and be able to use the money back in their pockets, whether it is for supporting and servicing that financing or to use it for other needs that the communities may have. We expect to also realize resilience and energy independence, as we know from some of the very, very sad stories we're hearing from the recent hurricanes. Yeah. Energy independence and storage can be hugely important when folks are trying to maintain their, whether it's medical devices, whether it is food, whether it is medicines in refrigeration. Energy independence is incredibly important. I want to create new jobs and great jobs in the clean energy economy. And as Stephen Benjamin was saying earlier, the importance of the opportunities to close some of the wealth gaps by supporting small businesses in communities that may have been left behind to realize some of the advantages of serving as, whether it's contractors, whether it's financiers, in a lot of the jobs that are going to be available associated with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So we have a suite of accomplishments that we're trying to realize, and if we can do that all, we're all going to get a gold star and a happy face on our report cards.
So I agree. But why do you think CDFIs and other mission-driven community lenders are the right vehicle to get this capital where it needs to go?
Great question, Majora. So much of what we're trying to do, if you look at our funding opportunities, our sometimes very text-heavy web pages, we're still trying to punch those up and make those exciting, is that so much of the work and the accomplishments are going to come through distributed financing models through communities who understand the needs of those communities, the opportunities of those communities. And so CDFIs, community development finance. I mean, you're hitting on the three pillars of what so much of the GGRF is about and intends to do. And so CDFIs, through your insights, through your connections to the community, understanding what those needs are going to be, and being able to engage in the innovation, inspiration, and creativity that they're already doing is so exciting for us. And so we're very pleased to see how much engagement and interest there is.
Perfect segue to Oswaldo Acosta. And so, Oswaldo, por favor, explain yourself a little bit. And then.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. Thank you, Majora. Oswaldo Acosta. I am the CEO of the City First Enterprises, CDFI, and we're a green lender as well. The question, can you repeat the question, Majora?
Oh, just introduce yourself.
Oh,
was
Oswaldo,
that me?
Yeah, that's Oswaldo Acosta, City First Enterprises.
Yep. Okay, now I have a question for you. All right. So,
is my mic working?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
so as part of.
It wasn't me.
You asked for the voice, that's what
I
you got.
did.
Right?
All right, so that wasn't the kind of voice, but we're going to go again. So City First Enterprises, or CFE, they have a history of actually partnering with green banks. What do you think are the key areas of partnership for CDFIs, climate finance actors, in the context of GGRF and beyond? And who else needs to be involved?
Oh, there are three questions there. Well, the first thing is, why CDFIs? Why are we the key vehicle? Does this work well? I think I can get it go. We are the key vehicle to. This is not working, right?
Does he need both mics on?
Can you hear me?
No.
Oh, come on. How about this? Okay. CDFIs are the key vehicle to distribute this money because, as David said, GGRF was, in effective, what it is to create a $27 billion distributed finance fund. We are in every corner of the economy, of the American economy. More importantly, we are integrated or embedded in the communities that are not getting funds or capital from the existing infrastructure of clean energy in this country, which is pretty robust. So in that sense, we are the natural partner for the US government, for the EPA to distribute the money. So what are the models of collaboration that I think we ought to explore? Where in the continuum of loan origination and investing we play? So very quickly, I think we should work very hard together as a CDFI industry with green banks and private lenders on pipeline generation. We should be able to do the evangelizing, if you will, of this new world of new clean energy. We need to be able to collaborate on underwriting deals, and we need to be able to help communities to access other incentives that are part of the new ecosystem. We have a big challenge with the monetization of the ITC, which is it's part of the IRA, and we should be able to help those communities that lack the sophistication and, frankly, the awareness to be part of this new economy. In that sense, we are a natural partner.
Yeah.
Who is missing, to your last question, Majora, who is missing from the picture is the private players. As David also said, one of the key ingredients of this policy is that we need to unlock private capital. We need to enable and platform these for-profit capital providers to be part of this decarbonization of the low-income communities. So in that sense, we need to be a platform for private capital to reach the decarbonization of small businesses, low-income communities in the housing side, and the supply chain. And I think that's in that sense, we are the key player in the space.
So before you get a little follow-up to that, how are you working to kind of execute that vision?
That's an excellent question.
The supply chain in particular.
We are experimenting. We are developing a platform. We are now focused on the micro picture, as I often joke at the company. We are working at the molecular level of a transaction. We're building a platform with our local partner, the DC Local Green Bank, to give you an example. So we are the recipient and the manager of the Solar for All in DC, which is one of the programs. And we have a part of our capital is part of the total fund is $24 million. We have $6 million, and they have $24 million. We have one single platform by which a local developer will access the money through one integrated system. In that way, we're operationalizing the vision of collaboration. One of the main challenges would be, I think, to put aside the local agendas, and as my friend Duan yesterday said very clearly, we need to put aside egos and collaborate. Yeah. Make sure that nobody has the monopoly of the truth, and this is public policy money. This is a transfer from the general public to the next generation. And we need to reinvent the way we partner in the public and private space. So that's how we're trying to make sure that our vision gets a fair trial.
Cool. That's another really good segue, actually, to Ruth Ann. And then definitely, I'm hoping we can get some interaction between you all. But Ruth Ann, can you talk about how to make the clean energy investments palatable and achievable for low-income communities?
Sure. Good
and
morning.
Also, before you do that, just make sure everybody knows who you are. They should know anyway, but just
good morning, everybody. I'm Ruth Ann Norton. I'm the president and CEO of the Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. We're headquartered in Baltimore, but work throughout the country, working at that intersection of social determinants of health, of building opportunity, and advancing racial equity through healthy housing. But I think it's how do we take the $12 billion from the EPA that is of the $27 billion intended for Justice 40 communities that are seen as disadvantaged, but that have suffered through poor policy forever. And how do we make these dollars not only matter, but work in a way that all of the financing is not in the end debt, but it's truly equity for restorative justice. For us, we're in the decarbonization, clean energy realm because of health. The same reason, same pathway that brought us into lead poisoning and to asthma reduction in housing is the enormous health benefits that we see from decarbonization, from full electrification. But it goes a little further in that we are seeing in our work, in our whole house approach work in Baltimore, by taking funds today around decarbonization and electrification and teaming them with health and safety. Because you cannot electrify a home that is wet, full of mold, mildew, and moisture. You can't put solar on a roof that's weak. You have to address these things that matter to community, that open doors so kids get in a classroom truly able to learn, and that dignify our older adults. And we can talk more about it, but what we are seeing in the work we're doing as a precursor for the GGRF funds actually arriving in our communities is increased housing values, closing appraisal gaps, lowering emergency room visits, lowering hospitalizations. And what we're doing with that is reinvesting health dollars because of the health savings and bringing that back into the work. We're bringing utility dollars that we in Maryland just flipped the script on equity to ensure that the highest amount of dollars, as my governor Wes Moore says, so we leave no one behind. We have to ensure that the programs are equitable in how we do that. And what we are achieving holistically is going to be the mitigator to the debt and moving that to equity. And so I invite everybody to come see our work of what's happening. You know, as I said, we've got a project in the Bronx we're paying for out of Medicaid savings. But to make these work and make it matter, we have to think about health. We have to think about housing stability. We have to think about the housing value that comes and be able to value that and make that cashable. So the last thing I would say is we are getting ready. We're part of DC Solar for All for Maryland Clean Energy Center, and looking at what we're doing is it's going to be critical for CDFIs to understand the role of navigators to get rebates, tax credits, and all of these things to families in a way that are cashable, that have a value, that can be seen, heard, feel, and into daily lives that people are moving forward. But for us, it's health, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I love the idea.
Common sense.
Yeah, the fact that being really creative about how you spend your money and even avoiding costs and how that can build equity. But I think that sort of leads me to another question for you, Ruth Ann, that there are still so many myths, you know, not just even like thinking about how to be creative, but just straight up myths about how green investments and how the economics actually work, like whole house electrification, for example. How do you dispel some of these myths, and who are the right partners or players to put out those messages, these myth-busting messages?
So since I'm talking about, Carlos, in our hometown, right, we'll talk about Baltimore, but, you know, people said to me, the Black community in Baltimore will never move off of their gas stoves in low-income communities because that is what saved them when the grid's gone down. Mythology.
Yeah.
So we built community-based electrification advisory boards to build ambassadors to see the data, to see the facts. People want their housing to be stable, to be healthy, to have value go up. If you can demonstrate those things, you're going to have engagement. We have really big uptake in all of our communities that we're working in Maryland and other places around the country. But we had a client, Corliss Billups. She worked all of her career at the state government. She retired and literally within a decade was about to lose her house because of all of the health and safety issues. She was not able to take a proper bath because she couldn't get hot water working. She had to go to her third floor to stay warm in the winter. She had to go to her basement to stay cool in the summer. Things were just not working. And she never let her grandchildren come in her home because of the lead paint issues, because of the mold issues that come from extreme heat, extreme cold. and all of this together. She became one of our first whole house electrification clients. So that meant we took out every gas appliance, from the water heater to the HVAC to the dryer to her stove. And we fixed all of the underlying health and safety so we could do that work. Putting solar on the roof. We pushed our local utility to do the hookup, right? Because we're trying to get them to see the opportunity. Today, Corliss didn't have to move into public housing for seniors, which would have been a tragedy after spending 30 years working in public service. Her grandchildren at the age of 6, 7 years of age now come over and are able to spend the night, her greatest joy. Her bills are down. Literally, the cost of her energy is down. Her housing is stable. And, you know, she said to me, like, she has an induction stove that she has now. And she said, well, when you tell people that the cast iron that we inherited from our grandparents works on induction, that was the ticket, right? But my point is that the quality of life in her house, with the air she breathes, and the fact that she feels comfortable having her grandkids stay with her. That's the ball game. Plus it works economically, right? We want to close those appraisal gaps. We want to keep people in their homes. We want to build intergenerational wealth transfer. But we have to do this by not just saying we're going to finance something. We have to address the other things that matter.
Right. Like there's literally, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay.
Can I add a couple
Yes.
of things? That story a million times. That is the challenge that we have ahead of us. And the reality is that scaling that story will be a massive effort of imagination for all of us. The other reality, the one thing that we don't say enough at these conversations, at these forums, is that decarbonizing households, electrifying our lives, it's going to be very expensive. And the economics are very thin. And it will be a subsidy effort. And a subsidy has a bad rap. It feels against the ethos of what we're trying to do. We're bringing the idea of the orthodoxy of capitalism, that we're going to put loans and things are going to happen magically and things, the market will solve the problem. That is mythology too. We need to be, as an industry, we need to know that we're the stewards, not the owners, the stewards, the managers of people's money. And for this to be transformational, for this to be impactful, we need to inject subsidy. How and when? When in the deal and in what form? Risk is a possibility. We need to absorb risk. As an industry, we are another dirty secret. We're conservative. We make loans when we expect that the money is coming back. Fair enough, we're lenders. But we need to change the prism by which we understand risk. We need to be a little bit more creative when it comes to issuing loans and bring subsidy. The last thing I would say is if the energy transition is going to be expensive, because it is a fact. Clean technology is getting cheaper, installation is getting easier, the democratization of solar, it's everywhere, but it's still very expensive. So as a CDFI sector, I challenge us to see how do we use the CCIA money, for instance, to transfer that to the equity of the house. Make sure that the people that have to make a decision, the developer, the landlord, the small business that needs to make a decision between solar or no solar, they don't make a decision between solar and fossil fuel. They make a decision about solar and profitability. That's a decision. It's a very economic, rational activity. So we need to make sure that our intervention, and this is another taboo, if I can say that today, we need to make sure that our intervention, the capital injection from City First Enterprises, makes that household happy at the end of the day because they save money, that the business makes a little bit more profitable and more profit, that the business is viable, and therefore they go to the second project. Because if we allow them to barely save 3 cents a kilowatt hour for the bill, it's not enough. The friction and the transaction cost is too high. So how do we do that? I don't have the answer. We're trying to figure it out. But money has to be, the $27 billion is money that my children and the next generation will pay for it. Therefore, it's a fiscal injection and is borrowing money from the next generation. So how do we do that 1 million times and we make sure that we are just the stewards of this injection of capital to our new generation? That's it. That's a couple of points there.
It's huge. Did you want to follow up with Zach? I have sort of a follow-up question to that, because it's true that the capital flowing, from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is catalytic. But how, and it's for all of you, please, how can we, ensure that the industry ensures that the capital reaches, in particular, underserved communities?
You got to look at co-benefit analysis here, right? So there's an economic reinvestment quotient that I hope that CDFIs will look at in healthcare. In Lancaster, Pennsylvania, the hospital is co-investing with us and with a $50 million check. WellPoint in Maryland is helping to pay for part of the intervention. MedStar is paying it, Molina in New York. So there's a co-benefit there. There's co-benefits on the utilities. There's co-benefit reinvestment from the equity of housing value that we can recapture back. And I just want that, so I think it's sophisticated at one level, and as it becomes part of a system at another, it becomes a mitigator, right? And we can see real dollars changing hands on
But
that.
to your point, that would be considered a subsidy that is there. I mean, you can.
Well, I look at
way.
it as reinvestment from savings created. We haven't yet gotten government to do something that I dream of, which is calculate those savings and reinvest them where they need. If it's not your department, it goes somewhere else. But how do you put that into the banking system, the finance system, into pockets instead of letting it go? I'll let others go, but I learned this message when my arch rival, Duke University, had me come down and give a talk. I went to Chapel Hill because we had saved $44.5 billion by taking Baltimore from the most lead poison concentrated place in the country and reducing lead poisoning by 99.6%. $45 billion went into the ether, not into community.
Right.
So we've been really working on how do you tag dollars to get reinvestment when government gets a little better at that, but we can do it on small steps.
Please.
Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to kind of double tap on is that idea, is you mentioned, Ruth Ann, the Justice 40 requirement for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Actually, because of our Solar for All program is 100% in low-income and disadvantaged communities, Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, it's actually more than $20 billion of the $27 billion is oriented towards focusing on low-income and disadvantaged communities. And you mentioned the importance of looking at innovative ways to bring in other capital and other financing into it. And so because the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund doesn't put restrictions on the use or the braiding or the weaving of the greenhouse gas reduction funds with other federal sources, whether it's from Medicare or Medicaid, whether it is other from Department of Housing and Urban Development, other sources of funding. As you think about putting those together, a lot of those are oriented towards the federal assistance programs in those same communities. So getting to that question, in order to put together that capital stack that creates that equity portion that unlocks some of the capital participation that Oswaldo is talking about, that is inherently part of and the nature of the communities that we're talking about helping.
It's the new age underwriter. It's
new age
underwriter that's an outcome. And by the way, we stay away from the word weave lately and does stick to brave. Those who know. But but an outcome broker who can look at those.
Oswaldo.
Can I just reframe one thing, Oswaldo? And that was when you mentioned subsidy. I want to kind of twist the lens on that a little bit and talk about or consider that as taking on risk or perceived risk, right? And so I know that's what you mean, but the reason that is so important, as you were talking about, is that the gap between perceived risk and real risk, when it comes to servicing that capital for the projects that we're talking about, drives that perceived risk, which increases the threshold for returns for that private capital participation. I think what you're talking about is so important because 100%. The deal flow and the data that we'll be able to collect for us, for the CDFI fund, to close that risk perception versus risk actuarial gap, as you talk about like assessments and appraisals, Ruth Ann, that creates, and that can unlock those deals we're talking about, which is so incredible, right?
That's right.
Yes, absolutely. A couple of things. On that, the gap between the actuarial gap, the actuarial risk and the perceived risk is real, and we are still learning how the sector will perform financially. We, as an industry, will be educated in the next few months and few years. To answer your question, Majora, as to how do we make sure that these funds, the benefits of this new economy, the new green economy that is emerging, gets to the low-income communities and to the new America, to the people that look and talk like me and others, or Appalachia America, the corners of the economy, of the American economy that haven't been beneficiaries of this of the green energy transfer policies that we have had in this country. How do we ensure that? I think CDFIs are pretty good at one thing. They're embedded in their communities, and we have a good finger in the pulse of what is happening in the local commercial corridors. But, however, this is a new level. This is $27 billion. It's a new magnitude. And how do we can be effective. We can be transformational. We will miss the opportunity if we don't change our business model for pipeline formation. What we're doing at CFE, and many of my colleagues are doing already, is that we are creating our pipelines. We're talking to developers, to would-be sponsors. We're talking to local businessmen and businesswomen. We are reaching out to the churches. We are evangelizing, if you will. We are socializing this new thing. We need to reverse engineer the process. Typically, a lender is a reactive player in the economic cycle. You pick up the phone, yes, you need $4 million, let me do what can I do for you? We need to be the one making those phone calls. Yeah. We need to be the ones convening people at the local community and say, hey, have you heard of the ITC? What do you know about the new transferability rule? Let me tell you a couple of things about that. You can get 40% of your tax credit, of your project cost if you do this. We need to be advisors, so whatever the new term is. We need to be the rainmakers. We need to be the project stewards. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. Analogous to education and healthcare in this country, there are many opportunities out there. What is the main barrier between the opportunity and many communities? Awareness, information. There is a lot of asymmetry of information. CDFIs should be the ambassador of the new clean energy economy everywhere. Yeah. We need to go 100%. And make it happen, because we can't wait until the phone rings. It's not going to be enough. So that's how we get to the communities that the money is intended for. The Justice 40 is accomplished doing that.
So do any of you have, thank you. That kind of reminded me, do any of you have fellow CDI practitioners who are still wondering how climate financing kind of fits into their mission? And if you do, what else do you want to tell them? Please? Do you have any fellow CDFI practitioners who are wondering how climate financing actually fits into their mission?
So I'm not in the CDFI world. I'm the outlier here. But we're in the midst of giving away $40 million on behalf of the EPA called Thriving Communities Grants. And as we have talked to rural CDFI organizations in West Virginia, in western part of PA, I think there is a challenge of how communities see clean energy and the role of CDFI and how they're going to connect to convince that to happen. So I see much more of wanting to make it happen and needing to build the case for the portfolio in some communities where this is not known as well, maybe seen as political versus need, and really having to do that education for a community of how to connect with the CDFI, because that also, I have to say, from a community perspective, and you say community development finance, right? And people go, oh, not for me. So making, to Oswaldo's point, making that connection around it.
Of the $27 billion, at least $1.5 billion is going to be directed towards technical assistance. So some of the CDFs, so there's a number of CDFIs who have a lot of experience in green lending. There's some that have kind of dipped their toes in it with a few cases where bringing them to those that are interested, that providing the technical assistance, providing opportunities to learn about standardized loans or underwriting models that might differ from traditional underwriting is a huge opportunity. So we're hoping that and expect that our grantees that are managing these technical assistance funds are going to be able to bring some of those CDFIs that may be green energy curious aboard as part of the ecosystem.
Okay, now I've got one last question. So we're going to talk about ecosystem. And it's for everybody. You know, climate investments in low-income and other underinvested communities have the power to drive wealth creation. So how do we empower and engage the service providers, the designers and architects, the manufacturing firms, the building trades, community colleges, workforce entities to build economic benefits and community wealth beyond the projects themselves? And how do we keep those benefits local across the ecosystem?
I'll go very quickly. It's a very simple thesis that we have at CFE, and many of my colleagues are also thinking about this. The GGRF has three, even in the statute, I think there are three goals. David, correct me if I'm wrong. It's decarbonizing the economy, leveraging private capital, and reach out to low-income communities. Those are the three tenets of the legislation, and it's also embedded in the everywhere in the literature of GGRF. Not there, a fourth one that is missing, or it's just maybe it's weaved in the whole thing, is that we are by fiat, just because of the government said so, creating a new industry. It's industrial policy 101. We're pushing $27 billion, arguably $300 billion if you think of the IRA, and there will be a new business class. There will be a new generation of entrepreneurs, a new generation of wealthy women and wealthy men and middle class. There is going to be wealth creation. The point that I'm trying to make, if you're following me, if I'm being eloquent enough, is that we need to make sure that that new economy looks like the rest of America. It doesn't look like the rest of corporate America. It looks like the rest of America. The trucking company in Appalachia, in Baltimore, that has the possibility to be a contractor to a multi-million-dollar project in their backyard, and it needs $2 million for be a vendor, can go to a CDFI or a green bank and say, hey, I need to be a partner of this new Vestas project. How do I do that? They go to a bank. I love my banker friends, but they can't do it because it's very hard. So we should be able to ensure that the next generation of business women that look like the rest of the country. That's my point. So how do we make sure that wealth creation, it's part of the new economy for diverse communities? It's not only black and white or whatever, it's just the rest of America. We have distributed finance creates distributed wealth, if you will. That's the point.
Awesome. I think to take that very simply, right, because we're trying to scale up contractors to just do the work, but there has to be a pathway that is not just jobs, and we check that off as community investment. It is, where is the capitalization to cover the insurance, to cover the space, to cover the tools, to become owners?
Yeah.
And moving from jobs to ownership, that's how it reflects community. That's how community builds within itself. And that, I think, is sort of the message and the challenge.
Great.
Because we are scaling so fast right now. Everybody is scaling so fast. And communities have to be able to scale without feeling paralyzed, right? And capital will help on that.
And David, you get the last word.
Last word? Well, I think that we talk about partnership. I think radical and courageous partnership is going to be the message of the day. And we were talking earlier about what was my walk-on song going to be like in baseball, and I decided it was going to be "Lean on Me." So that phrase, and you'll pardon me for my singing, just lean on me, sister, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on.
Lord knows
so
we
let's
do.
lean on each other.
All right, so, and with that, David Widawsky, Oswaldo Acosta, and Ruth Ann Norton, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's all, folks.
Thank you, Majora.
Thank
Thank
you.